This is very interesting data. Interesting, the kind word. Discouraging is the negative word. New poll has found that half of all Americans with credit card debt are concerned over their ability to pay it back. We'll go down the levels of concern here in a moment. Redfield and Wilton Strategies did this for Newsweek magazine, and they found that 46% of Americans with credit cards are either very or fairly concerned over paying back their spending debts. Now, I want to make sure you catch this. They're not very or fairly concerned about making their credit card payments each month. They're very or fairly concerned about actually paying it all back. That tells me they think, I'm going to be carrying credit card debt the rest of my freaking life. Holy crap. That'll make you want to get out a bottle of wine and a blanket and a funny movie. How depressing is that? Can you imagine waking up every morning with that hanging over you? This is crazy. 28% of Americans are very concerned. So I was kind of giving you the 46% contained everybody that was very or fairly, but of the very concerned, in other words, they're freaking out. 28% of Americans very concerned that they'll ever be able to pay off their credit card debt. 28% of Americans have one credit card in their name. 25% of Americans have two credit cards, and 12% have three. Americans with more than three credit cards was recorded at 13%. That's a lot of people. The number went up from 11% just in 2023. Popped 2 percentage points of people having more than three cards. They're just loading stuff up, folks. They're not stopping. Hey, that one's full. I'll take another, Johnny. And they get another credit card. Americans owe a staggering combined where's my Dr. Evil voice when I need it? $1 trillion and growing. That wasn't even a good Dr. Evil at all. I want to call that out for those of you who comment on things like that. I do recognize that. That was not good. It's not my best Dr. Evil voice, but, we gave you the mental image. $1 trillion and counting. This according to the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, I love this. They always go to an expert, and sometimes I get quoted in these articles as an expert, so I got to be careful here. But I pray that if I am ever quoted again in another article as an expert, that I don't say something as stupid as this expert just is about to say that I'm going to read. I'm not going to say his name because that would be unkind. And there's no need for me to be unkind. But this is an expert. Speaking of all of this horrible data I just gave you, kind folks, listen to what this Nostradamus came up with when the media asked him to comment. I believe credit card debt has reached record-breaking levels due to persistent inflation. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for showing up. Really? Anybody else? Nobody else seeing how stupid that quote is? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Credit card debt reaches record levels every year for the last 20 years, keeps going up, not because of inflation, but because people can't control their spending. This has nothing to do with inflation. In fact, I'll tell you how stupid this guy is. Next year at this time, pay attention to the credit card debt, and we will be at a new record of credit card debt. And inflation, it doesn't matter where inflation is. So this bonehead has been paying attention to the news too long and doesn't think about human behavior. So he comes up with what a person who has no depth would say. And he says, well, inflation's up, so people have to use their credit cards to be able to handle groceries. No, inflation is up. That's true. However, people aren't on a budget. People aren't planning for Christmas. People are living paycheck to paycheck. We have now in America the highest percentage, over 50% of six-figure earners are still living paycheck to paycheck. And I say something like that, by the way, and they put it out on YouTube or it goes on Instagram, and people come at me and say the nastiest things to me. And it really hurts my feelings. No, it doesn't at all. They say nasty things to me. Ken, you have no idea what you're talking about sitting up there in your ivory studio, one clown said to me recently. First of all, it's not an ivory studio, but I get the point. Oh, you don't have any idea how much money you need to live. Yeah, I do. I have 3 teenagers, 2 of which are boys. I need to have, let's say, a quarter of Costco to properly feed these boys every month. Don't tell me I don't know how much money it costs. I got 2 teenagers that are driving, a third on the way. I know how much car insurance costs. By the way, I'm not like all these politicians that don't know how much a gallon of milk costs. I know how much a gallon of milk costs. I know how much hamburger costs. Good Lord, don't ask me how much bacon costs. Did I mention the teenage boys? So stop coming at me telling me that I don't know how much things cost. I know how much things cost. But my wife and I do not use a credit card for expenses. We don't use a credit card at all. So what's happening is when you live paycheck to paycheck and you don't budget and you don't plan and you have no self-discipline and you have no eye on the future, and then inflation happens, guess what? Then you are susceptible to fall back on a credit card. So it is, and again, the reason I'd say the person's name because this kind gentleman is probably not an idiot. It was an idiotic statement, but this guy is just saying what everybody else in culture says, which is it's okay to have a credit card for a little extra emergency expenses. And golly day, if things are tight, just put it on the credit card and get a little cash back. That's always good. And we'll figure it out later. And so what happens is culturally, what we do is we kick the can down the road. And folks, back to this. For those of you who don't think my rants always tie in, it's back to the start of this. Millions and millions of Americans don't believe that with confidence that they'll be able to pay their credit card debt back. They have kicked the can down the road. And you know what they're saying? This very data says they believe they're just going to keep kicking the can down the road and never pay it off. Stop kicking the can. Act like an adult.